Jake Harris sat alone in the corner of the mess hall, eating his food in silence. Around him, the noise of alien conversations filled the air. The Starboard Unity was a joint species exploration vessel, carrying members from 6 different races across the galaxy. Jake was one of only 4 humans on board, and right now, he felt every bit of that loneliness. A shadow fell over his table. Jake looked up to see Thrall standing there, his massive reptilian body blocking the light. The Gorvathy warrior stood nearly 8 feet tall, with scales like armor and teeth that could bite through metal. His species was known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate predators, and Thrall never let anyone forget it. "Move, soft skin," Thrall growled. "This is my table now." Jake glanced around. There were plenty of empty tables. This was not about seating. This was about dominance. "There are other tables," Jake said calmly. Thrall's eyes narrowed. He reached down and grabbed Jake's tray, throwing it across the room. Food splattered against the wall. The mess hall went quiet. Everyone was watching now. "I said move," Thrall repeated. Jake stood up slowly. He was average height for a human, which meant he barely reached Thrall's chest. He looked up at the Gorvathy without fear, without anger, without anything at all in his expression. "Fine," Jake said. "Enjoy your table." He walked away without looking back. Behind him, Thrall laughed loudly. "This is why humans are prey," Thrall announced to the room. "No fight. No pride. Just soft meat waiting to be eaten." Several Kavani officers chittered in agreement. The insectoid species stood tall and thin, with hard shells and multiple arms. They were not as strong as the Gorvathy, but they were fast and deadly. Commander Vexler, the senior Kavani officer, clicked his mandibles in amusement. "The human knows his place," Vexler said. "At least he is smart enough to run." Jake kept walking. He found Myra waiting for him in the corridor outside. His wife looked worried. She was a xenobiologist, one of the leading experts on alien life forms, and she had been studying the crew dynamics since they came aboard. "Jake, you cannot keep letting them do this," she said quietly. "Words do not matter," Jake replied. "It is getting worse. Thrall is pushing harder every day. The Kavani are following his lead. Even the other species are starting to treat humans like we are beneath them." Jake shrugged. "Let them think what they want. When it matters, they will see." Myra grabbed his arm. "See what?" Jake just smiled and kissed her forehead. "Do not worry about me. I have work to do." He headed down to the engineering bay where he spent most of his time. Jake was the ship's mechanical specialist, the one they called when something broke and nobody else could fix it. The aliens might mock him in the mess hall, but they needed him when the engines failed or the life support system's glitched. Dr. Ben Carter was waiting for him there. Ben was the human medic, a cheerful man with a round face and kind eyes. He was Jake's closest friend on the ship. "Heard what happened," Ben said. "Thrall again?" "Always Thrall. One of these days, that lizard is going to push too hard." Jake picked up his tools and started working on a broken power coupling. "Maybe, but not today." The ship's alarm suddenly blared through the corridors. Captain Zinra's voice came over the speakers. She was Corvani, one of the few who did not openly mock the humans, though she did nothing to stop those who did. "All senior crew report to the bridge. We have received a distress signal." Jake and Ben exchanged looks, then headed for the bridge. The signal was coming from an uncharted planet in a nearby system. The message was garbled, broken. The one thing was clear. Someone was in trouble. "The planet is Class 7, the navigation officer reported. Dense jungle environment. High gravity. Toxic atmosphere in some regions. No known settlements. Then who sent the signal?" Captain Zinra asked. "Unknown. The signal is old technology, perhaps a crashed vessel from decades ago. Thrall stepped forward. I will lead the landing party. A simple rescue mission. Captain Zinra nodded. Take a team of 5. Commander Vexler will accompany you as second in command. I want the human engineer, Thrall said, pointing at Jake, in case there is broken equipment to repair. Jake saw the cruel smile on Thrall's face. The Gorvathy was not bringing him for his skills. He wanted to humiliate Jake further, to show everyone how useless humans were in the field. I will go, Jake said simply. Jake, Ben whispered. This is a trap. He wants to make you look bad. I know. I am still going. Ben sighed. Then I am coming too. You will need a medic. The landing party was assembled within the hour. Thrall, Vexler, 2 Corvani soldiers named Crix and Thorn, Jake, and Ben. They boarded the shuttle and launched toward the planet below Dodd as they descended through the atmosphere. Thrall looked at Jake with contempt. Try not to die too quickly, soft skin, he said. I want to enjoy watching you suffer. Jake said nothing. He just checked his equipment and waited. The jungle appeared on the view screen, a mass of dark green and strange colors. Trees taller than buildings stretched toward the sky. Mist covered everything like a blanket. Sensors are failing, the pilot announced. Electromagnetic interference is too strong. The shuttle shook violently. Something large flew past the window, a winged creature with claws like swords. Evasive action, Vexler ordered, but it was too late. The creature slammed into the shuttle side. Alarm screamed. The shuttle spun out of control. Jake grabbed a handhold and braced himself as the ground rushed up to meet them. The crash was violent. Metal tore. Lights exploded. Bodies were thrown around the cabin like toys. Then silence. Jake opened his eyes slowly. He was alive. Bruised and bleeding, but alive. Around him, the others were groaning, pulling themselves from the wreckage. Everyone okay? Ben called out, already checking for injuries. Thrall stood up, shaking debris from his scales. The shuttle is destroyed. Our equipment is dead. He was right. Every piece of advanced technology they had brought was fried. Communicators, weapons, scanners, everything was useless. We are stranded, Vexler said, his voice tight with fear. Through the broken hull, the jungle waited. Dark. Alive. Hungry. And somewhere in that darkness, something was already watching them. Jake looked out at the alien wilderness. And for the first time since they landed, he smiled. This was going to be interesting. The jungle was worse than anything the scanners had shown. The air was thick and wet, filled with strange smells that burned the nose. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound could be death coming closer. Thrall took command immediately, as Jake knew he would. We moved toward higher ground, the Gorvathy ordered. Find a clearing for rescue signal. We should build shelter first, Jake said. Study the environment. Learn what we are dealing with. Thrall turned and looked down at Jake with disgust. Did I ask for your opinion, Softskin? You are here to fix machines, not to lead. Now be silent and follow. Jake said nothing more. He simply fell in line behind the others. They walked for hours through the dense jungle. The gravity was stronger here than on the ship, making every step harder. The Corvani soldiers were struggling, their thin bodies not built for this kind of endurance. Even Thrall was breathing heavily. Though he tried to hide it, only Jake and Ben seemed unaffected. They walked steadily, breathing normally, their bodies adapting to the strain. How are you not tired? Crix asked Jake, his mandibles clicking with confusion. Humans are built for walking, Jake replied simply. It is what we do. Crix did not understand, but he was too exhausted to ask more questions. As night approached, They heard something moving through the trees. Something big. "Everyone stop," Thrall commanded, raising his clawed hand. The creature emerged from the shadows. It was six-legged, low to the ground, with black fur and fangs that dripped with green venom. Its eyes glowed yellow in the darkness. It was not alone. Jake could see more shapes moving behind it. "A pack hunter," Jake whispered. "Do not run. Running triggers the chase instinct." "I do not run from anything," Thrall growled. The Gorvathi charged at the creature before anyone could stop him. He was fast, powerful, a born predator. His claws slashed at the beast, but the creature was faster. It dodged Thrall's attack and bit down on his arm. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the jungle. Thrall roared in pain and threw the creature away, but the damage was done. His arm hung at a wrong angle, blood pouring from the wound. The pack moved closer, sensing weakness. "We need fire," Jake said suddenly. "Then, help me gather dry wood." "You two, keep them back." Vexler stared at him. "Fire? We have no equipment to make fire." "I do not need equipment." Jake moved quickly, gathering dry leaves and sticks while Ben helped. The Gorvani soldiers formed a defensive line, their natural speed keeping the creatures at bay for now. Thrall stood behind them, clutching his broken arm, his face twisted with pain and shame. Jake found 2 stones in his pocket. He always carried them, a habit from his survival training on Earth. He struck them together, again and again, until sparks flew. The dry leaves caught. Smoke rose, then flames. The creatures stopped moving. Their yellow eyes fixed on the fire with something that looked like fear. Jake fed the flames, making them bigger, brighter. The smoke spread through the air. One by one, the creatures backed away, disappearing into the darkness. Everyone stared at Jake. "How did you do that?" Vexler demanded. "How did you know fire would work?" "Most predators fear fire," Jake explained. "It is one of the oldest weapons my species ever created. We have been making fire for hundreds of thousands of years." "Primitive?" Thrall spat, though his voice was weak from blood loss. "Primitive," Jake agreed, "but effective." Ben moved to treat Thrall's arm while the others rested. Jake did not rest. He walked around the edge of their small camp, studying the ground, the trees, the patterns of movement in the shadows. "What are you doing?" Crix asked. "Setting traps." "Traps?" Jake did not explain. He worked through the night, using vines and branches and sharp stones. He created simple mechanisms, hidden pits, and snares that would catch anything that came too close. The others watched him with confusion. This was not how warriors fought. This was not how predators hunted. This was something else entirely. Morning came slowly. The first light revealed 3 dead creatures hanging from Jake's traps. They had tried to attack during the night, and the traps had killed them silently. Thrall stared at the bodies with wide eyes. "You killed 3 of them," he said, "while you slept." "The traps killed them," Jake corrected. "I just built the traps. This is not hunting. This is not fighting. What kind of species does this?" Jake looked at the Gorvathi calmly. A species that learned to survive against things bigger and stronger than itself. We could not outfight them. We could not outrun them. So we outhought them. Thrall had no response to that. Ben finished wrapping fresh bandages around Thrall's arm. His face was grim. "The wound is infected," he said quietly to Jake. "The bacteria here is aggressive. It is eating his flesh from inside. I have done what I can, but without proper medicine, he will die in days." Jake nodded. "Then we need to move faster. Find shelter. Find plants I can use for medicine." "You know medicine?" "My wife is a xenobiologist. She made me memorize her research database before we left." including the plant life of unexplored planets. Ben laughed in disbelief. Of course she did. They helped Thrall to his feet. The Gorvathi was weak, his scales losing their color, his movements slow and clumsy. He was no longer the proud warrior who had mocked Jake in the mess hall. He was just another creature trying to survive Dodd as they prepared to move. Jake noticed something in the distance. Movement. Something bigger than the pack hunters. Something watching them from the shadows between the massive trees. He said nothing to the others. There was no point in causing panic. But he knew the truth now. They were being hunted. Something on this planet had marked them as prey. Something larger and smarter than anything they had faced so far. It was following them, learning their patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Jake had seen this behavior before. Not in aliens, but in the predators of Earth. Tigers, lions, wolves. They all did the same thing. They watched. They waited. They learned. And then they killed. But Jake knew something else too. Something those creatures did not expect. Humans had not survived on Earth by being the strongest or the fastest. They had survived by being the most stubborn, the most clever, and the most relentless creatures their planet had ever produced. Whatever was hunting them had never faced anything. Like a human before Dodd, it was about to learn why that was a mistake. Jake picked up his makeshift spear and started walking. The jungle swallowed them once more, and somewhere in the darkness, the hunt continued. 3 days had passed since the crash. 3 days of walking through endless jungle. 3 days of watching Thrall grow weaker with every hour. Jake led the group now. Nobody had voted for this. Nobody had given him permission. He had simply started walking in the right direction, and the others had followed. Even Vexler, who had mocked humans since the first day, now walked silently behind Jake without complaint. How much farther? Crix asked, his voice tired. The high ground is still 2 days away, Jake replied. But we need to find food first. We are running low. Then we hunt, Thrall said weakly. He was being carried between Thorn and Vexler now, his legs too weak to support him. Find prey? Kill it. Eat it. That is exactly what we will do, Jake said. But not the way you are thinking. He stopped at a clearing and studied the ground. There were tracks here, pressed into the soft dirt. Some kind of grazing animal, large enough to feed them all. The tracks are heading east, Jake said. We follow. Why follow? Vexler asked. If we find it, we attack. We are predators. Your way of hunting will not work here. The prey is faster than us. The moment it sees us, it runs. We will never catch it in a straight chase. Then what do you suggest? Jake smiled slightly. We walk it to death. Nobody understood what he meant. Jake did not explain. He simply started following the tracks at a steady pace. Not running, not rushing. Just walking with a rhythm that never stopped. An hour passed. Then, too, the tracks grew fresher. They found droppings that were still warm. The prey was close. 3 more hours. The Kavani soldiers were exhausted, their legs shaking. But Jake kept walking. Ben stayed with him, matching his pace, understanding what Jake was doing, even if the others did not. There, Jake said finally. The creature was ahead of them, standing in a small clearing. It was the size of a horse with 6 legs and a long neck. It looked tired. Its sides were heaving. Foam dripped from its mouth. It is exhausted, Vexler said in disbelief. But how? We did not chase it. We just walked. That is the point, Jake explained. Most predators are sprinters. They attack fast, and if they miss, they give up. Prey animals evolved to escape those short bursts. But humans are different. We do not sprint. We just keep coming. We walk and walk and walk, and eventually the prey cannot run anymore. That is horrible, Crix whispered. That is how my ancestors survived, Jake replied. We call it persistence hunting. On Earth, humans would chase animals across entire continents. Not because we were fast, but because we never stopped. The prey would run. It would rest. It would think it was safe. And then we would appear again, still walking, still coming. Eventually, it would be too tired to run anymore. He approached the exhausted creature slowly. It tried to move, but stumbled. Jake ended its suffering quickly, cleanly, with a single strike to the neck. Food for 3 days, he said. Help me carry it back to camp. That night, they ate well for the first time since the crash. Ben used the opportunity to treat Threll's wound with plants Jake had identified along the way. The infection was still spreading, but slower now. Threll watched Jake through fever-bright eyes. You are not what I thought, the Gorvathy said quietly. No, Jake agreed. I am not. The Gorvathy have ruled our world for 10,000 years because we are the strongest, the fastest, the most deadly. No species has ever challenged us. But your kind, you humans, you are something different. You do not fight fair. Jake poked at the fire. There is no such thing as fair in survival. There is only alive and dead. That is a Gorvathy saying. Maybe our species are not so different after all. Threll laughed weakly, then fell into a troubled sleep. The next morning, Jake found new tracks near their camp. Massive prints pressed deep into the ground by something of incredible weight. Claw marks on the trees at heights that should have been impossible. The stalker was getting closer. It watched us last night, Jake told Ben quietly. It is learning our patterns, testing our defenses. What do? We change the pattern. We make it confused, uncertain. Predators do not attack when they are unsure. Jake began his campaign of psychological warfare. He created false trails leading in wrong directions. He set up noise traps that would crash and bang at random times through the night. He moved the camp every few hours, never staying in one place long enough to be predictable. The stalker grew frustrated. Jake found signs of it circling their position, looking for an opening, finding none. It was not used to prey that fought back. It was not used to creatures that did not simply run and wait to die. On the fourth night, they finally saw it. The creature emerged from the darkness at the edge of the firelight. It was massive, bigger than anything Jake had ever seen. Its body was covered in scales like armor. Its teeth were the size of daggers. Eyes like burning coals stared at them with ancient hunger. Threll, even in his weakened state, recognized what they were facing. A world killer, he whispered. The apex predator of this planet. Nothing has ever survived meeting one. The creature circled their camp slowly, studying them. It did not attack. Not yet. It was still learning. Jake stood up and walked toward the edge of the firelight. Jake, no, Ben hissed. Jake ignored him. He walked until he was face to face with the beast. Nothing between them but a few feet of jungle floor. The creature stared at him. Jake stared back. Neither moved. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The creature's eyes narrowed in confusion. This was wrong. This was not how prey behaved. Prey ran. Prey screamed. Prey begged for mercy. This small, soft creature was doing none of those things. It was just standing there, staring unafraid. Jake picked up a stone and threw it at the creature's face. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to surprise. The beast flinched, and in that moment, Jake saw something he had been waiting for. Fear. Not much. Just a flicker. But it was there. You are not used to prey that fights back, Jake said softly. You do not know what to do with something that is not afraid. That makes you uncertain. Uncertainty will get you killed. The creature backed away slowly, disappearing into the darkness. But Jake knew it would return. This was not over. The beast had retreated, but it had not given up. It would come back, and next time, it would not be so cautious. Jake returned to the fire and sat down heavily. What just happened? Vexler demanded. Why did it leave? Because I showed it something it has never seen before, Jake said. Which is? Jake looked into the flames, his face hard as stone. Prey that knows it is the real predator. They ran out of options at the edge of a cliff. The ground had been rising for hours, leading them toward the high ground Jake had been seeking. But the jungle had other plans. The path narrowed until it ended at a sheer drop. Hundreds of feet of empty air waiting below. Behind them, the creature followed. They could hear it moving through the trees, getting closer with every minute. We are trapped, Vexler said, his voice tight with fear. There is nowhere to go. Thrall pulled himself free from Thorn's support. The Gorvathy warrior could barely stand, his infected arm hanging useless at his side, but his eyes were clear. Leave me, Thrall said. I will hold it off while you find another path. No, Jake said. This is not your choice, human. I am dying anyway. At least let my death have meaning. Jake stepped close to Thrall and looked up at him. I said no. That is not how humans work. We do not leave people behind. Not ever. Why? Thrall asked, genuinely confused. It makes no sense. Sacrifice one to save many. That is logical. Maybe, but humans are not logical. We are stubborn. We fight for each other even when there is no hope. We carry our wounded even when it slows us down. We refuse to abandon anyone, even when it would be easier to let them die. Thrall stared at him for a long moment. Your species is insane. Probably, Jake admitted. Now help me think of a way out of this. The creature burst through the trees. It was done waiting, done being cautious. It charged at them with a roar that shook the ground. Jake grabbed a burning branch from their fire and held it in front of him. Everyone, make yourselves look bigger, he ordered. Stand tall. Wave your arms. Make noise. As loud as you can. What? Crix asked. Do it now. They obeyed without understanding. The entire group spread out and started shouting, waving branches, throwing rocks, making themselves look as large and threatening as possible. The creature slowed. It was 20 feet away now. Close enough to kill them all with a single charge. But it did not charge. It stopped and stared at them with those burning eyes, confused by what it was seeing. Jake walked forward, alone, putting himself between the beast and his companions. He held the burning branch high and screamed at the creature. A raw sound of defiance that echoed off the cliff walls. The beast took a step back. Jake is insane, Vexler whispered to Ben. No, Ben said quietly. He understands predator psychology. That thing has never met prey that stands its ground. Its entire hunting strategy is based on fear, on things running. Jake is taking away its biggest advantage. Jake threw the burning branch at the creature's face. It roared and jerked its head away. He threw a rock, then another. Each time, he stepped forward instead of back. The creature retreated slowly. Step by step, it backed away from this strange, small being that refused to act like prey. Its eyes showed something Jake had been waiting to see again. Uncertainty, fear. The beast turned and disappeared into the jungle. Jake did not celebrate. He pointed to a dark opening in the cliff face that he had noticed earlier. Caves, he said. We go inside. It will be harder for that thing to follow us in tight spaces. They moved quickly, helping Thrall through the narrow entrance. The cave was dark and cold, but after the humid jungle, it felt almost safe. As they moved deeper, Jake noticed something strange. The walls were too smooth, too regular. This was not a natural cave. "These are ruins," he said, running his hand along the stone. "Someone built this." They found more evidence as they went deeper. Carved pillars, collapsed doorways, symbols etched into the walls that nobody could read. This had been a city once, built by a civilization that no longer existed. What happened to them? Thorn asked nervously. Jake studied the ruins with growing understanding. They died. Probably centuries ago. Maybe longer. How? I do not know for certain. But I can guess. He pointed to marks on the walls. Scratch marks. Tooth marks. They could not adapt. They built walls instead of learning to fight. They hid instead of evolving. And eventually, the predators found them anyway. They walked in silence after that, thinking about what Jake had said. Thrall spoke first. "How did humans survive?" Jake turned to look at him. "Your world," Thrall continued. "It must have had predators too. Things that wanted to eat you. How did your species survive?" Jake sat down on a fallen pillar. The others gathered around him, even the Corvani, listening like children hearing a story for the first time. "Earth was a death world," Jake began. "Not officially, but it should have been. We had ice ages that covered half the planet in frozen death. We had predators with teeth and claws that could tear us apart. We had diseases that killed millions. Floods, earthquakes, volcanoes. Everything on Earth tried to kill us at some point. But you survived," Thrall said. "We did more than survive. We became the dominant species. Not because we were the strongest. We were not. Not because we were the fastest. We were not that either. We survived because we refused to die." Jake's voice grew quiet but intense. "When the ice came, we built fires and made clothing. When the predators hunted us, we learned to hunt them back. When disease struck, we invented medicine. Every single thing that tried to kill us, we found a way to beat. And the things we could not beat individually, we beat together. Humans are pack animals. We work as one. We protect each other. We carry our wounded, remember?" Thrall touched his infected arm without thinking. "After hundreds of thousands of years," Jake continued, "we stopped being prey. We became the thing that everything else feared. Not because of our teeth or our claws, because we have neither, but because we never give up. We never stop coming. And we will do anything to protect our own." Vexler was staring at Jake with new eyes. "You are not prey species at all," he said slowly. "You are predators. Predators who learn to look like prey." "Something like that," Jake agreed. They found an old power source deeper in the ruins. It was ancient technology, built by the dead civilization, but Jake understood machines. He worked through the night, repairing connections, rerouting power, until a faint signal began to pulse. "This will boost our distress call," he said. "The ship should hear us now." For the first time in days, there was hope. But then they heard it. The sound of massive footsteps echoing through the tunnels. The scratch of claws on stone. The creature had followed them, and it was not alone. Through the shadows, Jake saw more shapes moving. More eyes glowing in the darkness. The apex predator had brought its pack. Jake picked up his spear and turned to face the tunnels. "Ben, keep that signal running. Everyone else with me." Thrall struggled to his feet, using a broken pillar as a crutch. "I told you to leave me behind," he said, "and I told you that is not how humans work." Jake handed him a makeshift weapon. "Now stop complaining and help me kill these things." The Gorvathy bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. "You truly are insane," he said. "Yes," Jake agreed, "but I am still alive. And so are you. Let us keep it that way." The creatures charged from the darkness, and the final battle began. The ruins became a battlefield. Jake had prepared for this moment. He had been preparing since they first entered the caves. While the others rested, he had mapped the tunnels, found the narrow passages, and identified the choke points where large creatures would struggle to pass. Crix, Thorn, cover the left passage, Jake commanded. Vexler, you take the right. Thrall, stay behind us and watch for anything that gets through. What about you? Ben asked, still working on the signal booster. I will handle the main tunnel. The first creature came fast, smaller than the Alpha, but still deadly. It squeezed through the narrow passage and launched itself at Jake. He sidestepped, thrust his spear forward, and caught it in the throat. The beast fell, but another was already coming. Jake fought with no wasted movement. Every strike was precise. Every dodge was calculated. He was not fighting with rage or desperation. He was fighting with cold, perfect efficiency. Vexler watched from his position as Jake killed creature after creature. The human took wounds. Claws raked across his arm. Teeth grazed his leg. But he did not stop. He did not slow down. He just kept fighting as if the pain meant nothing. How is he doing that? Vexler whispered. Thrall answered, his voice filled with something that sounded like awe. He is not feeling the pain. He has pushed it aside. His entire focus is on survival. I have seen warriors try to achieve such focus their entire lives. He does it like breathing. The wave of smaller creatures broke against their defense. Bodies piled up in the tunnels. Blue blood painted the ancient stones dot. Then the Alpha came dot. It barely fit through the main passage, but it forced its way through, crumbling ancient walls with its massive body. Its eyes found Jake immediately. The human had killed its pack. The human had driven it from its hunting ground. The human had made it feel fear for the first time in its long life. Now, the Alpha would have its revenge. Jake faced the beast alone. His spear looked like a toy against such a monster. The Alpha roared, the sound shaking dust from the ceiling. Jake did not roar back. He did not shout or scream. He simply watched, breathing slowly, waiting. The Alpha charged. Jake moved at the last moment, sliding to the side as those massive jaws snapped shut on empty air. He thrust his spear upward, aiming for the spot he had noticed during their earlier encounters. A gap in the scales. A weakness near the neck. The spear bit deep. The Alpha screamed and thrashed, throwing Jake against the wall. He felt something break in his chest, ribs, maybe more. He could not breathe properly. Blood filled his mouth. He got up anyway. The Alpha was wounded now, but not dead. It turned toward Jake with murder in its eyes. But something else was there too. Confusion. This small creature should be dead. This prey should have given up. Why was it still fighting? Jake picked up a broken piece of stone, the only weapon within reach. It was barely sharp enough to cut flesh. Against the Alpha's armor, it was useless. He charged anyway. The Alpha lunged to meet him. Jake ducked under those massive jaws, rolled across the ground, and came up right next to the creature's head. He saw the wound his spear had made. He drove the stone into it with every bit of strength he had left. The Alpha's roar became a scream. It thrashed wildly, trying to dislodge the thing that was hurting it. Jake held on, pushing the stone deeper, twisting it. He felt the moment the light left the creature's eyes. The Alpha fell. The ground shook with its weight. The other creatures in the tunnels froze, their pack instinct broken without their leader. Then they ran. Back through the tunnels, back into the jungle, away from the small, soft creature that had just killed the most powerful predator on their world. Jake collapsed against the Alpha's body, unable to stand. His vision was going dark. He could hear Ben calling his name, could feel hands pressing against his wounds. It all seemed very far away. He had won. That was enough. Jake woke up in the medical bay of the Starboard Unity. The lights were too bright. His entire body hurt. But he was alive, and after a moment, he saw Myra sitting beside him, her hand wrapped around his. "You are an idiot," she said, but her voice was thick with tears. "I know," he whispered. "But I came back. You almost did not." She squeezed his hand tighter. 3 broken ribs. Internal bleeding. Infections from the local bacteria. Ben said it was a miracle you survived. "I am human," Jake said weakly. "We do not die easy." The door opened and Ben entered, followed by an unexpected figure. Thrall walked in slowly, his arm in a proper healing cast now, his scales regaining their color. But something was different about him. The arrogance was gone. The contempt had vanished. Behind Thrall came Vexler, Crix, and Thorn. They formed a line at the foot of Jake's bed and stood in silence for a moment. Then Thrall did something Jake had never seen before. The massive Gorvathy bowed his head. "I owe you my life," Thrall said. "All of us do. You carried me when I could not walk. You fought when I could not fight. You refused to leave me behind when leaving me would have been the smart choice." Jake tried to wave it off, but Thrall continued. "I called you prey. I called you weak. I was wrong." His voice grew heavy with respect. "Humans are not prey. Humans are the most dangerous species I have ever met. Not because you are strong, not because you are fast, but because you simply refuse to stop. You keep coming. You keep fighting. You never give up." Vexler stepped forward. "The crew has heard what happened on the planet. The recordings from our communicators before they died. Our testimony. Everyone knows what you did. And?" Jake asked. "Nobody will call humans prey again, ever." When Jake was well enough to leave the medical bay, he found something strange waiting for him. The aliens who had once mocked him now stepped aside when he passed. Not with fear, exactly, but with respect. The Kolvani officers nodded to him. The Gorvathy warriors gave him space. In the mess hall, he sat at his usual corner table. No one tried to take it from him. Thrall approached, but not to threaten. He sat down across from Jake and placed a drink in front of him. "I want to understand something," Thrall said. "When we were trapped at the cliff, when death was certain, you were not afraid. I could see it in your eyes. How?" Jake took a sip of his drink. "I was afraid. Very afraid. You did not show it. That is the point." Jake set down his glass. "Humans feel fear just like anyone else. We just learned a long time ago that fear is not a command. It is information. It tells you that something dangerous is happening. It does not tell you to run. It does not tell you to freeze. What you do with that fear is your choice." Thrall thought about this for a long time. "Your species is terrifying," he finally said. "I mean this as a compliment." Jake laughed softly. "I know." That night, Mira found Jake alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. "You have been quiet since we got back," she said, sitting beside him. "What is wrong?" Jake was silent for a moment. "Down on that planet, I became something. Something that scared even me. Pure survival instinct. No mercy, no hesitation. I killed without feeling anything at all." Mira took his hand. "Is that what we are?" Jake asked quietly. "Is that what humans really are? Predators pretending to be civilized?" "Maybe," Myra said. "Or maybe we are civilized beings who remember how to be predators when we need to be. There is a difference." Jake looked at her. "The difference," she continued, "is choice. Those creatures on the planet killed because it was all they knew. You killed to protect people, to save lives. And when it was over, you stalked. That is what makes us human. Not that we can become monsters when we must, but that we can stop being monsters when the danger is gone." Jake squeezed her hand and turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, Countless alien species looked at humans and saw small, soft, harmless creatures. They would learn the truth eventually. They always did. Humans were not prey. Humans were what happened when prey decided it was tired of being hunted. And that was the most dangerous thing in the universe.